Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back. Wanted to take just a few minutes today and talk about a topic that I keep seeing in the news. And the topic is recession. And so, anyone who's paid attention to the news lately knows that it's a buzzword happening quite a bit. And I think, by the way, it's normal when you have high economic times to start saying, when is it going to come down, right? When we start having high economic times, at some point, the economy is going to go down. And in the Dental Wealth Podcast, where we're a group of people who want to think about, well, then how does that affect me, right? And how do I create wealth, and how do I look at it as opportunity? And it really goes back down to, this idea that people get wealthy when things are on sale. And one of the ways to get wealthy is to look at opportunity and look at recessions as opportunities. And so I tell you that to say, you might be looking at this thing upside down. And you might be looking at this going, sometimes if you watch the news and you watch the conversations, it can create fear. And it can create, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Now, if you've been the dental practice that's been riding on the economy, and if you had a 20% drop in revenues, that might even be a better question. And what would you do if you had a 20% drop in revenues? And so what we want to do is, in high economic times, what we want to do is we want to be able to have capital put aside that allows us to take advantage of these times. So if the economy goes down, this idea of worrying about whether the economy goes up or down, first of all, I don't know about you, but I can only control it so much. And then, so I don't let it keep me up at night, but I do think about this. And I think about this idea of, right, I want you to become wealthier. I want you to think in a wealthy mindset. Now, the poor person mindset, the stage one mindset, is this idea of, if the economy goes down, if there's a recession, then it's negative. It's a winter and everything's kind of gloom and doom, and we contract our business and we hunker down, so to speak. But can't winter also be a time for growth? And we go back and look at it and say, think about what I mean by that is this. Isn't there opportunities to expand when everyone else is contracting? If your competition is pulling back, would it be a good time to expand? And on top of that, aren't things on sale? Some of you listening to this podcast might be thinking, hey, I want a second location or a third location, or I want to purchase real estate. Do you want to buy it high, or do you want to buy it low? See, when you start to move up wealth thinking and you start moving strategy, what you can start thinking is saying, I'm going to use the high economic times to allow myself to put capital to the side so that when things go on sale, then I have the ability to take advantage. Write that down. Take advantage. You want to be able to take advantage of those times. You want to be able to, those are the times when people become really, really, really wealthy. Are you set up for those times? Are you looking at the next 5 years and thinking, I'm going to take advantage? Or are you thinking, oh my gosh, if the economy goes down, if I lost 10% revenue, 20% revenue, I'd be in a tough situation. And by the way, don't count the bank to tell you whether you're in a good situation or bad situation. What I mean by that is, right now in this economic time, there are banks that are lending like it was 2008 again. And I've said that on this podcast. And those banks, they already understand they're going to have a dental practice or 2 go under or 10 go under. And they're okay with it. Because they realize some are going to go under. Don't let that be you, right? And we call that in business pessimistic modeling, right? You have to look at your business model and say, hey, what if something was to happen? And the idea of this message is not to be pessimistic, it's to be optimistic and say, okay, I've got to look to say, well, what would happen if something happened to my revenues by 10, 20%? What would happen? And then also, like, I would have a really strong strategy in place. It's like someone asked me recently, I loved it. They looked at me and they said, Eric, if you bought my business tomorrow, like, what would you do? And I just like went off and just told him all the things I would do. And I think it was eye-opening for him, right? Because I think we get stuck in a certain mindset. Well, it's the same thing for you. And it was interesting recently. I was spending time with a doctor and I was just, I told him what to do. And an amazing thing happened. He did it. And what I mean by that is this was no small feat. I mean, I'm talking about adding another location, getting an associate. I mean, I'm talking about within like a month, within like 30 days. Sometimes people they're so fearful to make action that it takes them years to make a decision that should literally take 30 days. And so when we start looking at this economic times, we say, well, maybe a down economy would be a great time to expand. Maybe it would be the chance for me to take my model. First of all, we need to shore up your business model. And then we take that business model and we expand it, but we don't expand it when it takes a terrific amount of capital because, right, everything's really expensive. We might want to do it when the economy contracts, when less people are marketing. Now, here's a question for you. Good economic time, bad economic time, do people need their teeth taken care of? We call that a recession-proof product. Now, certainly there are services that, that people might pull back on, certain cosmetic cases. I get that. But it's a marketplace that you got to think about it. Like, you want to get ready, and I would get excited. So if I'm building Dental Wealth, and if I'm your strategist and we're like in your ear, like, I'm making sure that I'm setting aside a certain amount of capital. Like, I want to make sure I have the ability to expand when others contract. When everybody else is freaking out, I want to be smiling. I want to be excited. And this is what great wealthy people do. And by the way, one of the reasons why you don't hear this message all the time is because wealthy people don't want you to know. What we do is we wait. And while everybody else contracts, we expand. We purchase when it's on sale. And then we watch everybody else freak out. And I don't want that to be you. I mean, the whole idea of this podcast, I think I was talking about last week about the idea of being able to impact your family and why we're doing all this, right? And you want to build a scalable organization so that organization doesn't need you to be there every day. And as the organization gets larger, it has more money to be able to put scalability in place. It has the more ability to pay for associates. It has the ability to hire an operations, not an office manager, but an operations manager, and maybe even a COO if it gets large enough. It has the ability to pay for training so the team's trained up. It has the ability to put these systems in place that allows you to then go have, one, the money, and two, the time to be able to live the life you want. And what you'll find, the more you do that, the more you'll want to impact others, which is where I'm trying to get you to head. But like, what a great time to be having this message. What a great time. And if you think about that, this podcast right this very minute is doing the opposite of everyone else in the entire industry and news. Everybody else is having the conversation of like, oh my gosh, what do we do if the recession comes? And what I'm telling you to do is I'm kind of grabbing you by the shoulders and metaphorically and saying, get excited. And that's what you do. You get excited and you go, but to be excited, to take opportunity when it comes, to take advantage of opportunity when it comes, you have to prepare. You have to prepare. You have to get ready. There's a saying Jim Rohn once said years ago. You can either plant in the spring or you can beg in the winter. I would write that down. Right? Powerful. You can plant in the spring or you can beg in the winter. And that's what's going to happen, right? We call, right, this might be the spring, maybe even moving into summer. And it's a great opportunity. This is the time to take advantage. We don't know how long this economy lasts, but we do know that it's here. And so we take advantage. And what we do is we plant now. We get the seeds together now. We prep now. And now's the time to get really, really smart and say, hey, and if you need help, call us up. If you need help, find an advisor or whatever. Not throwing it into some mutual fund, okay, which is going to ride the entire market down, but to put it back in your business and to be able to put money aside so that when we can be ready to have capital and resources so that you can expand when everybody else contracts. I'm telling you, you heard it here. Like, the economy is going to go down. And it will come back up, and it will go back down, and it will come back up, and it will go back down, and it will come back up. With frequency. And wealthy people take advantage of both the spring and the winter. And that's a message for today. Is I don't want you to get caught up in listening to the news, and I don't want you to get caught up in the circles of people that are panicking, and I don't want you to get caught up with that group of people, because remember, they're thinking on a different frequency and a different wavelength than you. I want you to think about, how do I take advantage? If you don't know, right, well, help. But you got to have a plan of action. And guys, I'm excited. I mean, this is like an exciting message. And I mean, even though every time it's kind of weird to throw the word recession and excitement, because we've been taught that that's a time where we should be worried and fearful. And I'm telling you that that's actually been told you wrong. It's actually a time when, imagine this. I mean, you got to think back in 2008, 2009, you could have bought a $2 million home for $300,000. A $2 million home. I mean, imagine that. Let's just play that for a second. Maybe it was 2009, whatever. You have $300,000 laying around. You buy a $2 million home for $300,000. You could have easily, right, set on the $300,000, no big deal. Even property taxes came down for a period of time. And then you turned around and you sold the thing in 2018, 2019, right? And you make a killing. And in fact, I would argue, if you had done that, right, in 2008, 2009, had you not listened to everybody else who was so scared and so panicked and so worried, if you had not listened to them, everybody was worried about buying things. Oh my gosh, it's never going to come back. I had an economist one time tell me the dollar will never come back, which I looked at him at the time. I said, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. He's got a PhD in economics. And I was like, but what he was saying was nonsense. And so imagine it if you had zigged when everyone else zagged, when you looked at it and said, oh my gosh, what a great time. And you had the $300,000 sitting aside, and instead of spending everything in 2008 and buying the exotic cars and everything else, you had put the money aside, and then you had bought that home and you'd set on that home, and then you turned around and you sold that house. Not only are the tax advantages of doing it that way pretty great, but think about that for a second. Some of you would have made more in 5 to 7 years on a return than you've made in your stock portfolio in the last 30 years. Some of you would have had more capital aside in that one transaction than you would have had aside in everything you've tried to save over the last 30 years. Yeah, it's powerful, right? You think about it like that, you go, wow, holy moly, Eric, you're right. Yeah, I'm right. But here's the new, when I tell you that, some of you are going, oh man, I missed out. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The point of this podcast is you didn't miss out. Maybe you missed out on that opportunity, but the opportunities are coming again. And they might not be that drastic. They might. But the opportunities are going to come when everything's on sale, but you have to be able to take advantage of it. So what I want you to do is, at the end of this podcast, I want you to write down, what can I do to be taking advantage of the market? What can I do? First of all, I want you to write down, what would happen if my revenues went down 20%? I think that's really good for you to see. All right. It's called pessimistic modeling. What would I do in that situation? And then what are my liquid assets right now? What do I have available to get if I needed to? By the way, if they're all sitting in certain stocks and mutual funds, they might ride down with the market. So you might not, and if they're locked in qualified funds, which we've already talked about in this podcast, you can't get them anyhow for most of you. So I don't love locking money up. You see that this is why I'm not a huge 401k person again, because it rode the market down technically, and then all of a sudden you wanted the money, you couldn't get it anyhow because it was locked up in some 401k where you would have made a lot of money on that investment I just told you about, especially as a business owner. So when we get this capital, we start to say, how much capital do I have access to? Whether it's through a credit line, whether it's through cash, whether it's through whatever it is, you want to have the ability to get capital when you need it. Now, this isn't about taking out debt, certainly. What I'm trying to tell you is right now is as things are going well, I need you to have capital. I need you to get capital ready, and I need you to be in a cash position to deploy the capital when other people can't. Then you can take advantage of the marketplace. So get excited about this. Get excited about movements in the market. Be more sophisticated than the market. Be more sophisticated than your average dentist. Be more sophisticated than your family. Because when you do that, you can make gigantic gains, become extremely wealthy. And the amount of people and life you can impact by doing that will be worth all of the decision making, all of the strategic movements. Thank you for listening today. The message on this podcast is take advantage. Take advantage, get ready. If you've enjoyed this, hit subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.